Before we get into the video, I need you guys to do me a favour. Number 1, like the video. Also comment, let me know your thoughts on the story. Ireland's Alan Wilson was said to be one of the most prominent enforcers and hitmen for the Irish Kinahan cartel. Now Alan Wilson was known as the madman, and he was devious and deceptive as well as calculating and astute, because outwardly he wanted to portray himself as a gentleman, but his internal components were that of a man who was destined to be a dangerous gangster. So, Alan Wilson was known for his short fuse, and his evil knew no bounds. The Wilson family as an entity, as a family unit, were regarded as Ireland's only ever family of hitmen, and they were highly dangerous. The nephew of one of Ireland's most notorious criminal figures, Martin the General Cahill. So, it was no surprise the path that Alan would ultimately take, just like his cousins. Not only did Alan Wilson chillingly tell a Gardaí, "I will take you to the afterlife," it was also alleged that the big mouth gangster had also promised to a baby during the height of the Kinahan-Hutch feud. As we all know, the Kinahan-Hutch feud was seismic, in the sense that it completely changed the fabric of Ireland and destroyed countless lives. The two major criminal organisations were responsible for the cold and brutal ends of at least 18 people. On one side you had the Hutch gang, led by Jerry Hutch, and on the other side you had the Kinahan crime family, led by Daniel Kinahan. Most of the M's were conducted on Irish soil. However, some M's were covertly conducted in Spain, including the M of Gary Hutch, which sparked the brutal battle. Now, born in February of 1979 to parents John Cahill and Mary Cahill, the family resided in Ballyfermot, Dublin. Now, Alan saw crime every day of his life. He didn't even have to look out of the window. His brother was a well-known criminal. Through the Wilson family connections, Alan the Madman was an integral enforcer and hitman to the Kinahan crime family. Himself, along with his cousins, Eric, Keith and John, and nephew Luke, their bread and butter was contract murders, charging fees of upwards of €100,000. Cousins Eric Wilson was the first Wilson to pick up a gun when he fatally shot his ex-best friend, Martin Kenny, in 2005, after the men argued over missing coke. Now Eric then went on to murder again in Drogheda, before being jailed for 28 years for fatally gangster Tor Dan Smith while high on coke outside a bar in Costa del Sol in 2010. Eric was the most ruthless of the Wilsons, as police believe that he is single-handedly responsible for at least 9 M's. Now Keith Wilson was also jailed for life for murder of Daniel Gaynor in Finglas in August of 2010, and as for John Wilson, he was fatally murdered in 2012. Now, as for Alan the Madman Wilson, it was said that he was involved in the disappearance of Romanian traveller, 18-year-old marioara rostas, in the 6th of January 2009. Now, because marioara rostas was a Romanian traveller and was not from Ireland, Dublin specifically, her disappearance wasn't given the urgency that it required. Now, marioara rostas was picked up on the street while begging with her older brother at the junction of Lombard Street. Marioara was hungry and she had gone to the car under the promise that she would be paid €10 and they would give her some food to eat, specifically McDonald's. Now Alan allegedly was the driver of the car. Now shortly after leaving the scene, Marioara had phoned her family in Romania and explained that she had been taken and had no idea where she was, but wanted the parents to collect her. She could barely read the street signs. Meanwhile, her family had waited for Marioara to return to Lombard Street all evening, before ultimately going to the Gardaí to report her missing. It took 72 hours for the missing persons report to come in due to the language barrier. After 2 anonymous calls, the Garda and forensics travelled to Bolton Street in Dublin. The house had been burnt down after an alleged M, shortly after Marioara had been missing. Now, Alan Wilson's sister and her partner, Fergus O'Halloran, lived there. Alan Wilson was known to stay at the house as well. When police examined the remains of the home, they found that guns had been fired at the property. The Garda was also told that Marioara had been in the head 4 times because Alan saw the devil in her. Now, Fergus also told the Garda that he helped Alan clean up the house after the M and moved her body under duress as Alan had took the safety of the pistol loaded ammo and then aimed it at Fergus. In 2012, Mariel Rosta's remains were found in a shallow grave at the foot of a Dublin mountain, bound and wrapped. Alan Wilson was arrested and Fergus took the stand to testify against Alan. Only Fergus jeopardised the whole case because he was found to have previously lied about being shot. Alan was ultimately acquitted for the M, and this was the first time that the shrewd gangster knew that he was possible of committing an M and actually getting away with it. Now, equipped with a larger-than-life reputation, on the 26th of July 2010, Alan Wilson was said to have shot 3 men, they being Brian Masterson, Wayne Barrett and Austin Purcell, at the Players Lounge pub, Fairview Strand, north of Dublin. Alan was said to have arrived at the Fairview pub in a stolen Volkswagen Golf and had an arsenal of GUNs, including a Smith & Wesson and a Sylvester semi-automatic, and over 30 rounds of ammo. At the time, Wayne Barrett was the doorman and he was struck at point-blank range, ammo striking him twice in the head. Austin Purcell, who was a customer, had been struck once in the chest and twice in the nether regions. Now, Brian Masterson, who again was a customer, was struck in the forearm and also in the back. Now, police quickly checked for CCTV and was able to point out Alan Wilson, who by now was on a first-name basis with the Gardaí and was well known to them too. Now, Alan was arrested. In the interview, he gave no comments before eventually admitting that he had secured the guns and the stolen Volkswagen Golf, but he did deny that he was responsible for striking 3 men with ammo. He also alluded to the fact that his cousins, John and Keith, also feared hitmen and enforcers could be responsible. Now, Alan Wilson was charged with attempted M, however, he agreed to conspiracy to M and accepted a 10-year jail sentence. Now, police theorised that the Wilson family were paid money for the Contract K by Republican Sean Hunt for the fact that his friend Carly Owens had been M'd on July 9th of 2010. Now, the Wilsons were supposed to murder IRA boss Alan Ryan, who was a regular at the Fairview, but Alan Wilson fired indiscriminately, not caring who he striked. And then in June 2019, while in Mountjoy prison, Alan suffered a broken nose and was left with permanent scars after he was given olanzapine without the knowledge by another prisoner. Incapacitated, Alan was struck with legs and fists and also struck with a sharp blade. He woke up 2 days later in an infirmary covered in bandages, covering his beaten body. Now, in a bid for freedom, Alan Wilson famously denounced the Kinahan crime family, both in court and also writing letters, claiming that he regretted joining the Kinahan family and he had been swayed and disillusioned. Now, the fallout was immediate and it was rumoured that a bounty was placed on Alan's head to the tune of €100,000. Now, Alan Wilson's life came crashing down for this simple reason. The gangster was secretly recorded by the Gardaí National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau when he was targeting Hanley in a failed Contract K. In one conversation with accomplice Joseph Joker Kelly, he says, "Remember the thing that happened at the Players Lounge? I done that. One of them right in the forehead and 5 times in the body. It's amazing how the CUN pulled through." Alan Wilson was also recorded telling Joseph Kelly in the audio to go and do what you have to do to K Mr. Hanley. Since his jail sentence, Alan Wilson has been targeted over a dozen times and he has been removed from certain prisons over 3 times because, as he said, he is in fear of his life. The dad of 4 also now has no problem blaming his cousins for certain M's and of course denouncing the Kinahan family, both in letters. He had famously written to a 3-judge court saying that he regretted aiding the gang and should have known better, but was blinded at the time, and he also asked for leniency. However, that's not gonna happen. Alan Wilson made a decision to live a certain type of lifestyle, and he has to accept what comes with it. Stay safe.